So good evening, friends. Connecting at 9 p.m. is a different ball game. And once you have a person like Mr. Vadhan, as they say, नाम different है और काम अलग है और दोनों में पहचान अलग है. And as they say, the destiny destines in its own way. We connected on a WhatsApp group, found something interesting. I thought, why not connect with someone and go similar to what we say beyond law. And beyond law means that where you can talk of skills beyond the law. And once we found that Mr. Vadhan is a famous author, we thought, why not take nuances, how to go about that, how to think about that, what is that out-of-box thinking, how to go about with your passion and your work, how to maintain the balance of the two balls between the them. So it is more like an interactive session rather than a monologue, which we normally have. Today, I will ask Mr. Vadhan that when we say the art of writing, what goes into it?
Hi, Vikas, thank you so much for the opportunity of being on your channel, and it's really wonderful opportunity. Just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Vadhan. My full name is Sai Chandra Vadhan. I write under the pen name of Vadhan. My people at work know me as Sai. I am a lawyer by qualification, about 33 years of experience, more into corporate law. I work for one of the big four. I'm an executive director there. I practiced law for 10 years. I was a constitutional lawyer, basically with petitions and administrative matters, way at the beginning of my career. That's just a little bit of a introduction about me. And nice question. Thanks for the question. And writing is a passion with me. It's something that I'm very crazy about. And to me, the art of writing generally means that it is a form of expression. Everything about communication, about human beings, is about the art of expression, whatever we do. And it is a reflection of your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your convictions are all rolled into one. And that is writing. Right? So I write fiction. I don't write non-fiction. I don't do anything to do with law in my writing. I write fiction. I write thrillers. And to me, what I write is about my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings about what I think about everything. And I put them into a form in which it is readable, hopefully enjoyable. And that is why writing will never be a science. Writing will always be an art form, basically because it comes from the heart. It comes from within you. And it's like any other art form. It's like painting, it's like drawing, it's like making a movie, or it's like writing a poem. Everything is about expression of feelings. That is what writing to me is. And that is why writing will always, to me, remain an art form rather than a science form, literally speaking. Writing is about telling the world your point of view. Just like artists put on a point of view when they do their painting. In fact, it is a picture drawn with words. And it has to be a point of view that is very close to your heart. That's writing. You can't just write about anything you want and expect that there will be heart in it, expect there'll be feeling in it, expect that there'll be a connect in it between you and your reader. For example, in my book called Fear of God, what came out from that book is a backlash of my own frustration over the corruption in society. So this book is about corruption. This book is about vigilantism. But it's a thriller. And it is a thriller that is soon going to be made into a movie, I know. And to be very honest, a simple fact like, breaking a traffic signal Uh, and when a policeman stops you, to actually tell him to confront him when you are in the mistake is a affront to law as such. It is a disrespect to law. It is disrespect to enforcement of law. And pulling names and throwing names at people. I mean, I've come across this so many instances where people go on the wrong side of the road. I found a lady driving in the middle of the night in Gurgaon on the opposite side of a flyover on an expressway. And when we stopped her, she said, "Mind your business." This is purely nothing more than a disrespect and a lack of regard for law. And being a lawyer, that created a lot of angst in me. And therefore, I came out with a book called Fear of God. And the concept of the book is obey the law and be protected by it, disobey the law and surrender to it. If you think you're above the law, there's only fear of God. So that is the concept based on which that movie was made. It's very close to my heart. And therefore, I wrote that book. The art of writing is expressing yourself and expressing your beliefs. In any form you choose. It could be a blog, it could be a book like I write, it could be a poem, it could be anything. But whatever you are doing, it is an art form, and it is something that is very close and emotional. That is my understanding of what or why I call writing an art form.
Speak that you were into the constitution law. Since we are speaking of writing, how does that constitution of any book come in the mind?
No, so constitutional law is the law relating to writ petitions, law relating to.
No, I'm saying constitution of a book. How do you think that you have to constitute a particular part? What goes behind the mind? What goes behind the heart? What goes behind the entire thought process? I'm asking in general.
It is a relentless energy. That's all I can say. It is like it makes me restless when I want to express something and I'm unable to express myself. So it's a relentless energy that's inside me about something that I am very close to, or about something that I feel close about, that I want to express. That's what drives me to write. And it is an energy that never fades until you're able to come out with it. It needs a whole lot of conviction for you to write. It's not something that you can, I've seen a lot of authors who come up to me and say, "Hey, I've started this book. I've written down all the ideas about this book. I have written 3-4 chapters in this book, and then I don't know what to do." That's because there's a lack of conviction in terms of what you want to write about. So you'll have to first of all choose what is your conviction. What is your belief system, and how strong is that belief system, and what you want to say about that belief system. And if there are any fiction readers in this among this audience, they'll know that a person like, say, for example, Ashwin Sanghi writes purely about Indian mythology and its present day context. I write about Indian mythology because I am a great lover of mythology. My latest book, called The Vimana Transcripts, is about is a thriller based on the temples of India. So therefore, what drives me is that idea that comes to your mind, and that idea needs to convert to paper, and it has to come out. And I have this great urge that I have to communicate that idea to my readers, and hope to get a feedback from them. I wrote a book called Agniputra, in which there is a fusion. There is a fusion between the Yajurveda that I've written about. I mean, it's a thriller. It's based on one line from the Yajurveda. I made an 82,000 word book. And then I fused that with quantum science, which is a very futuristic science. So typically, what drives an author to write is the idea, is the relentless energy that goes into him to bring out that idea, and to communicate that to his audience. That is what makes me write. I hope it answers.
Yeah. Then back to that question, it is quite interwoven with that. Do you, for any author or for a young person who wants to take into writing, like you said, blogging, writing, there's something concept known as a rough draft or some blueprint. How do you go about it? How do you write that book? And how do you structure within your mind? How do you start writing it down? What is the way forward?
Okay, there are different types of writers, authors in this world, because there are writers I know who create a storyboard of their book. Right? They prepare each and every character that is prepared, that is brought into the book. They prepare the sequences, those sequences in order. They understand what the idea is, then they grow it, then they do research. There are those kind of writers, very structured in terms of what they do. So they first get the idea and then they develop that idea into a whole range of things that they want to communicate, put that on a storyboard, sort it all out, create the characters that are going to communicate the idea to you, and then write the book. I am not that kind of a writer. I am an intuitive writer in the sense that there is one simple idea in my mind when I start writing a book. Right? And take an example, fear of God again. The simple idea was, if you think you are above the law, there is only fear of God. So everybody must be compliant with the law. Since my bread and butter, my work is about compliance, that has also a very special place. Now, taking that one idea and I created a story around it in terms of corruption. And when I took the story about corruption, I took the ideas from real life corruption stories that we have all read about or seen. Whether it is a registration of a motorcycle, or whether it is a multi-million-dollar deal, whether it is wheeler dealers, or whether it's a common ordinary government servant trying to make them extra money, whatever it is. All these corruption things is what I visualized, and I created a story around it. Now, I am an intuitive writer. All that I know when I'm starting a book is, this is my idea, and this is how my book will end. The rest of it, the book flows by itself. Now, this is very difficult writing. It's not easy. The easy way of doing that writing is to go in for the structured method of creating the storyboard, creating your story, breaking it up into bits and pieces, and then putting a strength to it. I believe that when you write a book, especially fiction, the most important ingredient for a writer when he's writing that book are the characters. And I'll give you examples of that. James Bond is a character created by Ian Fleming. Now, there are so many stories of James Bond that we've seen, right from Sean Connery to Daniel Craig. You might remember those stories. You might forget those stories, but you will remember James Bond. The author created that fantastic character. You can take Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. We have read so many Sherlock Holmes. We've seen so many Sherlock Holmes movies. You may forget the stories, but when you say Sherlock Holmes, you remember this guy who was extremely brilliant, manic, depressive, an amazing character created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In our times, Just recently, there was a huge television. I'm sorry, on Prime, you saw Lee Child's Jack Reacher. Before that, Tom Cruise acted in the movie called Jack Reacher. Lee Child created this character called Jack Reacher, a modern day sort of a drifter. And the character, not the stories, became so popular that Lee Child books are sold every 9 seconds in the world. Every 9 seconds, one of his books are sold. That is the power of that character called Jack Reacher. So, to me, a character is very, very important when you are writing a book. So, two things which I know is an idea, a concept of what the end will be, and a very, very strong character. These are the things that a young writer must keep in mind when you are structuring your book and when you are writing these books. If these three things fail, the books fail. Most importantly, if the characters fail, the book fails. If you are not able to identify with your hero, if you are not able to hate the villain, if you are not able to laugh at the comedian, the movie is a flop, right? So the characters are the ones that take the book forward, the story forward. Anything that you want to say, the point of view that you want to get across, the characters are the ones that take them forward. And therefore, those characters must be very interesting. Their life must be interesting. What makes them tick, what makes them do, what makes them stop something, doing something is very important when you're writing a book. It may be a love story, it may be an action thriller, it can be a mythology, it can be a fantasy. Unless the central characters of that book are strong, as a writer, you have failed your reader. That is my belief. And I've given you examples of how great characters have turned books around. So that is my opinion of a book, my opinion of what a structure of a book is. Three important things: the beginning or the idea, the end of the book, how you want to conclude the book, and the characters that are going to take the story forward. If you are able to get these three ingredients correctly, you are as an author, as an artist, the art of writing is something that you would have succeeded. I'm not talking about the business of writing here. I'm talking only about the art of writing, and you would have succeeded in that.
Once you write a book, or for that matter, any author, once he writes, does he visualize that his book will be 200 pages, 300 pages, how many chapters? What does it goes behind the mind when you actually start structuring that?
So I always believe, and I'm sure that a lot of other authors have said the same thing, because I always believe that the book writes itself. You really don't know. You can't say whether you can stop the book at 100 pages or whether you can stop the book at 300 pages. Most of my books, as a thumb rule, maybe, and as a very unofficial thumb rule, most of my books are at least 80,000 words. Roughly translated, it comes to around 300 to 350 pages on a paperback. So that's the size of the book that I write. But if you ask any author, how big do you think your book is going to be? I don't think they'll know. I mean, I don't know if J.K. Rowling ever thought when she was writing Harry Potter that she'll write 7 books out of it. She must have had an idea. But imagine she wrote about the same characters and the same story for 7 books. That's brilliant. I mean, the story, the conviction, your idea of communicating it, if it's so strong, the book can go on. It's also about how readable it gets. Okay, you can write a 1,000-page book, but who's going to read it? So then you will have to also look at how big can you get the book without getting it boring. And that's also very important when you're writing a book or when you're deciding the size of the book. So when you write a book, say, for example, if my book is a 80,000 word book, that means when I first finish my draft, it's almost 100,000 words. Okay. Now, after that, I do a lot of editing. My first draft gets over in, say, about 3 months. From there on, for the next 6 months, I'm only editing the book. I'm only fine tuning the story. It's like a sculpture, statue banate hain. You have to go on chipping away and making it as crisp as possible. Editing is very important. So, how much time do you want to spend on it? The larger the book, the larger will be the editing work. So, all of these things will be important to consider when you're looking at the size of the book that you're writing.
So, like you taking from the cue from Harry Potter, you said that at the first instance, it could have been that there's a concept of one book. And probably while you are writing it, you also do not perceive or conceive for any author that it can be 7 editions, 8 editions. And sometimes you feel that the entire idea in the first book is over. Probably it cannot push that. But then how do you push that envelope to further writing on those particular parameters?
It depends on whether the idea can be grown. It's all about the idea. I mean, you're taking Harry Potter into account. So there's this little child that she's created, a magical child. The second book was a little bit more about that magical child. The third book was a little bit more about the magical child, because then there is this huge villain who can move mountains, and then there is a little child facing him. The idea was so potent that she took the idea for 7 books until that child became 17 years old. And the actors who acted that part also grew with the story. So it all depends on the idea and how much of potency that idea has got. I mean, you take a look at any of the James Bond movies, you take a look at Lee Child's Jack Reacher that I was talking to you about, 21 books about the same character, but different stories. Same with James Bond. Same with any other thing. But there are other authors who cannot write about a character for more than 1 book. That idea is over. That idea is communicated. It's done. I'm moving to the next idea. That would be the thought flow of some other writers. So it's about it's about how strong your idea is and how much you want to explore and grow that idea. I'm writing a trilogy for which my first book, Shatru, was a prequel to the trilogy. It's based on Indian mythology. I wrote a prequel, and 6 years later, I'm bringing out my first part of my trilogy, which is getting published this year. Right? And then 3 other books are coming. 2 other books after this one. Now, I think it's 3 books. But I honestly don't know. Maybe it will become 5 books. Depending on how strong the idea is, how good the characters are, and how my audience receives it also.
So once we're talking of the audience, like one is that the blueprint, rough sketch for the book. Now, while you are writing at the same time, whatever questions I'm taking, I'm not talking straight to you, but I'm also talking for the audience who are watching us live on the YouTube and Facebook. To the effect that at the same time, you have also to think when the book is to be launched, what way it can have its own effect, just like a movie launch, like people go to Kapil Sharma, etc. Or there is some way out, how to hammer your point, how do you hammer the nail at the head? Are there specific strategies, or what is about it?
There are strategies. Unfortunately, for us writers and authors don't have the same amount of deep pockets that film producers do. So authors generally can't afford a Kapil Sharma show, so to speak. But then we do our own promotion. So the business of writing then comes into play. In India, globally, what happens is the publisher takes the responsibility of publicizing the book, along with printing and publishing and distributing the book. The publisher also takes responsibility for publicizing it. In India, that's not the case. In India, the publisher prints the book and then distributes the book through the normal trade channels to all bookstores or to Amazon or to Flipkart, etc., and then leaves it there. Doesn't do anything after that. Then it's up to the author again to promote the book. And therefore, the art of writing stops there and the business of writing starts there. Right? So if I want my book to be a success, if I want to see any amount of royalty out of that, I have to compete with 90,000 books that are coming into the market on a yearly basis in India. Today, along with my book that is going to be published and released this year, there are another 89,000 books coming into the country every year, only in fiction. And you know, how many bookshops do you have? And in those bookshops, what is their capacity? Hardly 2,000 books. Maximum 5,000 books. So where are these 90,000 books going? Who's reading them? Is anybody even seeing these 90,000 books in the market? That's where the business of writing comes. That's where marketing comes. That's where creating a brand comes. So then the author doesn't create a brand for his book. The author creates a brand for himself. Because you buy James Hadley Chase, that's a brand. You buy Robert Ludlum, that's a brand. You buy Amish Tripathi, that's a brand. Ashwin Sanghi, Chetan Bhagat. No matter what books they write, you buy the brand. It's like buying Colgate toothpaste. So for the author, for the young author, it's very difficult for him to understand that concept. He thinks he's going to write a book. Somebody is going to publish it. It's going to the bookstore and it's going to be a super success. Not so. Their reality hits the author. He falls to the ground. He doesn't know what's hit him. He's published his book, and along with him, 89,000 authors that year have published books. His book is lost in the crowd. Unless he builds a brand for himself, he has his own set of readers, and they like the books that he reads, and they appreciate the ideas he has. And that's when the author is able to sell his books.
How do you create that space within space?
Sorry?
How do you create that space within space?
Marketing is today for an author, the easiest form of marketing is online marketing, your social media. Of course, nothing takes the place of a good book. No matter how well you market, if your book is not good, it will flop. And no matter how, if you don't market, your book will have a moderate success because it's a hit. But the more you market, the more your book becomes a success. Social media is a form of marketing. Advertising is a form of marketing. Nowadays, giving interviews in newspapers is a waste of time. Because आज का newspaper हुआ, कल का waste paper हो गया. It's garbage in, garbage out. So it has to be a consistent form of marketing that the author has to do. And each author has found a way of doing that. I have found a way of doing that. There are other authors who have found a way of doing that. You will have to be consistently visible and be able to express yourself there. People should like the person that you are, the writing that you have, and the ideas that you are able to convey. And that should be expressed. Just like Beyond Law has got the kind of viewership it has is because of the subjects you've chosen. It's because of the way you've conducted it. And therefore, it has created a brand for itself. Same for an author. It doesn't happen with one book. It happens with many books. It happens over a period of time. And with a lot of work that you have to put in there in terms of communicating who you are to your audience. That is again slightly into the business of writing a book. Hey, Vikas, you there? I think that Vikas has dropped off. So until he joins, or maybe we can. Is there anybody who wants to ask questions? Anything that you want to say? He's joined again. Because you're muted.
Yeah. I'm sorry, there was some goof up. Now, you said marketing is a strategy, but few takeaways. What you can say that at least there's some common baseline in everything. What are the thumb rules for a youngster to think about how he can create that space within that Amazon, that bookstores, an imprint on the some person? Like you said, it's a huge world to create that. Within that entire world, you are just less than a molecule. How do you create that space amongst the people that you actually
So let me give you a perspective. First, before I come to that, let me give you a perspective. Today, the India is the second largest hub for English books in the world. The second largest. Can you imagine? We are the second largest consumer of English books in the world. And most of those English books are textbooks or, your school books. Could be a college. It could be, self-help and fiction. It is slated to be a 790 billion rupee market in the next 3 to 5 years. But production costs have increased. So after the pandemic, and therefore, because of paper increase, cost of increase, etc., the publishers are publishing lesser. We have piracy issues in this country. I mean, it's commonly sold on the roads. Those are not original books. They are all pirated books. and therefore authors are getting impacted, and publishing houses are getting impacted as a result of that. There is also a loss of what is known as bibliodiversity. People want to read the same thing over and over again. There is no diversity in which you want to read different things. These are all some of the disadvantages of the current thing. But in this huge market and the growing market, where there is a lot of scope, extremely high scope for authors, and in the fiction category, you have crimes and thrillers as the highest category of books that are sold in India today. The art of writing a book is crazy fun. The business of writing a book, for which you want the tips for the young authors, is a very, very deep pool of water, where if the author is not careful, he can drown. I've seen a number of authors who've published once and then they've gone. They're finished. They don't know what happened to their books. They don't know what happened to their writing careers. Everything must be planned in the business of writing, just like any other business. You have to have a budget for market. You have to know the right marketing, and this happens for authors by trial and error. It happened to me by trial and error. I burnt my fingers. I burnt cash, trying to understand what is the best method through which you can, get visibility. And you know what I learned at the end of the day, and this is the biggest tip to all my author friends, the ones who are starting or ones who are young. The biggest thing I learned is, no matter how much cash you burn, consistency is important. You have to be there. You have to keep writing books. Your books need to be published. You have to consistently be in the eye of the public. Amitabh Bachchan did not become a superstar with one movie. In fact, the first 5 movies that Amitabh Bachchan did were flops. So consistency is the name of the game, and that's what I understood. You have to be there and then market. Amazon has its own marketing plan for authors. Now, if you go to a publisher, they'll put your book on Amazon. That's the easiest marketplace to sell. But then there are thousands and thousands of books on Amazon. How is your book going to be different? Amazon has marketing plans for authors. So choose those marketing plans and take it forward from there. Go to book communities like Goodreads. Put yourself there. Try to get as much reviews as you can. Don't buy reviews, please. Get as much reviews as you can. Good reviews. And there are good reviewers who will review your books and put them up on, say, Amazon, etc. and so forth. The thumb rule is that in Amazon, if you have about 20 to 30 reviews, your book is bound to do well. In the first 1 month, if you're able to get 20 to 30 people to read your book and put up their reviews on Amazon, your book will do well. Right? So these are some of the tips that you'll have to understand. You'll learn few more. You'll learn more than I have learned in the future, maybe. But these are some of the things that you need to do. You have to be in the limelight. You have to keep writing. Nobody became a one book wonder except for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that lady who wrote it. And then she wrote the sequel for that book 40 years later. So that was the only book I know that you write one book and it's a bestseller. It broke all barriers and then the author stopped writing after that. Doesn't happen to everybody. You have to keep writing. You have to have those ideas. If you think that you're going to make money with writing in India, let me tell you that it is a labor of love. Practicing law is a much more lucrative bet for people. But if you have a love for writing, you will make it. And you will be a success. You will be an Ashwin Sanghi. You will be somebody big. You will be a Robert Ludlum. So So don't worry about that. But you must have consistency. That's the biggest tip that I learned.
So you say that consistency gives the confirmation of cash also indirectly.
Indirectly.
Yeah. Because ultimately it is the love what you write and you create the entire space of yours, or what you say, the Darwin's theory, survival of the fittest. Whatever you may do.
Survival of the fittest is, a fact of life in today's life, because no matter which profession you are in or whatever you're doing, right? Unless you are good at it today, you can't hope to be a success. In a way, it's good. It's called meritocracy. But in a way, it also means that you will have to keep improving yourself, fine-tuning yourself, bettering yourself, and then you fall into a rat race. I managed for a very long time in my life not to fall into a rat race. I write my books because I love to write. Thankfully for me, my books are appreciated, they are welcomed, and they are well read. And therefore, I am encouraged to write. I mean, if you look at the reviews for my book on Amazon, you'll be surprised. So I'm encouraged to write, and and that's important, that you should be encouraged, you should be appreciated. Any artist loves to be appreciated. So that's another thing, that your work is appreciated. There is qualitative, satisfaction for you.
So before we end for the day, according to you, success, as we all say, that there is no success without you. So first of all, it is your mindset, yourself, that which is required. As I say that what we say, since you were talking of mythology and all, charity begins at home. So the success also begins from you itself.
Confidence. See, I have this thing about. So to me, faith and conviction will get you success. Hope is a beggar. Faith is a conqueror. Having hope means that you are hoping somebody will buy your book. You hope that somebody will appreciate you, somebody will publish you. Hope is a beggar. If you have faith that you have a good book in your hand, if you have faith as a lawyer that you have a good case in your hand, or you have a good point in your hand, you will win. You will succeed. Faith is a conqueror. Hope is a beggar. Now, if you believe in that and move along with that, there is no way you can fail. It's good to have hope, but don't rely on hope. Have faith in yourself.
I'm reminded of the word faith. They say that if the mother or the father throws the child in the air and he or she still giggles because he or she has the faith that the parents will catch up. So that's the story. Pardon?
That the parents will catch it. That is faith. That's the conviction.
So and that's why the child laughs more when you throw him or her in the air. So that's on the parting note. We part for the day. And thank you, Mr. Vadhan. It was a pleasure connecting with you. And tomorrow, friends, again, 9 o'clock schedule. Back to the legal business. Individual solvency concepts, proceedings, latest developments in IBC 2018. So stay connected with us tomorrow at 9 a.m. That's by CA Manoj Anand. To stay connected with us.